Hand side of the Well Explorer, you have your grouping and your queries. The basic group has 3 folders to begin. All wells is a list of every well that you have security permissions to see in this particular database. I'm highlighted on all wells, and I can see at the very bottom of the screen that there are 55 wells, and one of them is currently highlighted. Recently opened wells is a grouping of the last 50 wells, 50 wells, that I have personally opened up. My wells is my own personal grouping, and I can right mouse click here and create new folders. So I might call this test 1, and I will create another folder which is test 2. If I'm running WellView on the network, this is configured so that other users don't see these My Wells folders. This is my own personal grouping. Speaking of grouping, when I click on the Group By, this is where you can define a hierarchy to group or associate your wells with relevant data. So a right mouse click is again how I'm going to begin. I'll click on this Not Defined, and I'm going to choose to add a Group By. So let's group these wells by country and field. These are 2 fields that are available in the well header table of the data model. So when I click on Select, I'm going to browse to the well header, which is the topmost entity in the data model, and I am going to look for field name and scroll down to find country name. So I've now added these 2 fields to group my wells. I'd like to change the order, so I will move country to the top. And I also have the option to right mouse click and define these as ascending or descending alphabetically. So just to illustrate this, I'm going to choose field name descending. Now when I click OK, what's happened is that all of these 55 wells that I have permission to see in my database, they've just dynamically been grouped. So I can see all of the wells by country by clicking on a country name such as Canada, and I can click on the plus sign to see the field names listed in a descending order below. So that's how easy it is to create groups. When you first run WellView, your company might set up some default groups. You can always add more groups. I'm going to show you a nice little addition in the WellView 10 series that I can group by something like a date field and choose to group those by year, etc. So let me just show you with an example. So let's say I want to group all of my wells by spud date. I'm going to go to the well header, because this is where spud date's located, and I'm going to choose it. And now you'll see at the bottom of the screen there's a date grouping option. If I just leave it as none, every spud date and time is listed individually here. So that's not particularly useful. So let's go back in and edit that group. And instead of none, I'm going to say to group it by year. So now I've got a list of all of the wells by spud year. If I edit that again, I can also say to make that descending. So now I've got the most current wells listed at the top by spud date. So that's another nice feature in the WellView 10 series. But it gets even better. In WellView 9 and prior to 9, we would only let you group by well header fields. In WellView 10, you can in fact group by any field in the data model. So imagine that I want to group by rig and number. So when I select, I'm actually going to go down into the rig table under the job, and I'm going to choose contractor and rig number. Now I've got a grouping of rig and rig number. So this is, in a sense, the ability to run a query and get the results right on this main page. And when I say any field in the data model, I mean any field in the data model. You could create a group by stimulation company. You could create a group by contact name. So you have access to the data model, the full data model now, when you're creating these groupings. You can create as many groups as you want. And you can have multiple levels in the grouping hierarchy. So perhaps I want to further group these rigs by job. So let's group the job first. So my drilling and completions rigs are separated, also well servicing. So when I select now, I'm going to choose something like the job type, and it appears at the top of the list. And now I've got group by job type, then rig and contractor number. Okay, so lots of new functionality in the grouping section for WellView 10. Quick Find is exactly that. Help me find a well quickly by some basic well header detail. So a very common way to use Quick Find would be something like well name. So I can say find all of the wells that have 2 in the well name. And when I click on search, you can see what it returns. If I want to get more specific, so I happen to know it's a sample and a 2, or a sample and a 02, so I can get as specific as I want to narrow down this search. Other very popular uses of Quick Find would be something like the API UWI, field name, etc. Throughout the application, you see this button with 3 dots, and that means there's a lookup. So in this case, for my 55 wells, I see a distinct list of the fields that are available. So I can select field name, or I could simply have typed that in.